In the year 2100, the Earth was no longer a safe place for humans to live. A devastating chemical war had destroyed the atmosphere, making it impossible for people to breathe. The once blue skies were now toxic, and the air was poisonous. Only 2 areas on the planet were still habitable, and these became the last refuges for humanity. One was the United Federation of Britain, where the wealthy and powerful lived in luxury. The other was a colony in Australia, where the poor and working-class people were forced to live. The Australian colony was controlled by the British government, with a ruthless leader named Cohagen in charge. He ensured that the colony remained under British control and that the workers were sent to Britain to do all the hard labor. The British needed workers to build and maintain their cities, but they didn't want to do the dirty work themselves. The problem was that the 2 colonies were on opposite sides of the Earth, making it difficult to travel between them. But the British had a solution. They built a massive elevator that went through the Earth's core. This elevator, known as the Earth Elevator, allowed workers to be transported from Australia to Britain in just 15 minutes. Douglas is shown running away from a robotic soldier with a girl. They're both badly hurt, but they manage to escape. However, they get shot in the hand, and Douglas realizes they can't both make it out alive. He decides to save the girl by pushing her to safety, but he gets caught. But then Douglas wakes up, and it's revealed that it was all just a dream. His wife, Lori, wakes up too and asks if he had the same dream again. Douglas brushes it off, not wanting to talk about it. Lori then receives an urgent message on her phone that a bomb has exploded on one of the trains, killing over 150 people. As a government agent, she has to go to work immediately. Before leaving, she gives Douglas a quick goodbye. Douglas watches the news on TV and sees that a rebel group has claimed responsibility for the bombing. They're against the British government controlling the Australian colony and want them to leave. The leader of the rebel group, Matthias, is determined to free the colony from British control. Meanwhile, Douglas, a laborer in the colony, heads to work. On his way, he sees an advertisement for a company called Recall, which offers a revolutionary virtual memory program. This program allows people to experience their deepest desires and fantasies in a completely realistic way, making them feel like they're really living the dream. Douglas is intrigued by the idea of experiencing his recurring dream in a more immersive way, but he's running late for work. As he rushes to the elevator, he notices that UFB soldiers are arresting people suspected of supporting the rebel group. His friend Harry arrives, and they ride the elevator to work together. Douglas confides in Harry that he's been feeling stuck in a rut, doing the same job for 5 years. He's eager to shake things up and experience something new. He mentions the Recall program, but Harry is skeptical. Harry warns Douglas that spending too much time in a virtual world can blur the lines between reality and simulation, causing the brain to lose its grip on what's real. The elevator carrying Douglas and other laborers from the colonies travels through the Earth's core and arrives in Britain. The workers are taken to a factory where they spend the day assembling android robots, which are used by the British government to control the colonies. During a break, a man named Merrick approaches Douglas and mentions that he overheard him talking about the Recall program in the elevator. Merrick reveals that he's used the program himself and recommends it to Douglas. He gives Douglas a card with the contact information of a dealer named Mac, telling him to get in touch if he's interested in trying the program. That night, Douglas has the same recurring dream again, which wakes him up in the middle of the night. Seeing his wife Lori sleeping peacefully, Douglas decides to take the plunge and contact Mac about the Recall program. He wants to experience his fantasy in a more realistic way. At midnight, Douglas arrives at Mac's address, and Mac begins explaining the details of the Recall program. Mac tells Douglas that he can choose from various fantasy scenarios, and Douglas selects the same spy fantasy that he's been dreaming about every day. Mac warns Douglas that the program is designed to keep fantasies separate from reality, and that it's essential to maintain this distinction to avoid confusing the two. Douglas agrees, and Mac begins preparing him for the procedure. Mac gives Douglas an injection to unlock his brain's memories, but what he discovers shocks him. Mac realizes that Douglas is not who he seems to be. He's actually a spy whose memories were erased by someone. Mac is furious and demands to know who Douglas really is and why he's pretending to be a normal worker. Just then, a group of Polish soldiers bursts into the room, killing Mac's men. Douglas is confused and disoriented, but as he tries to make sense of what's happening, his muscle memories suddenly kick in. He finds himself attacking the soldiers with ease, taking them down one by one. He has no idea how he's doing this, but it's clear that someone has tampered with his brain. Douglas escapes the chaos and rushes home to his wife Lori, determined to tell her everything he's discovered. But when he tries to hug her, she tries to knock him out, revealing that she's not who she seems to be either. Douglas is shocked and holds her at gunpoint, demanding to know the truth. Lori reveals that she's a British agent hired by Cohagen to keep an eye on Douglas. She's been pretending to be his wife for the past 5 weeks, but she's not really his wife. Douglas's memories were erased and new ones were installed, making him believe they'd been married for 7 years. The truth is, Douglas's entire life has been a lie. After discovering the truth about his life, Douglas is shaken and feels betrayed. He realizes that Britain's leader, Cohagen, must have been behind the manipulation of his memories and identity. Douglas decides to take matters into his own hands and kills Lori, the android robots, and starts running away. As he flees, Lori informs the police about Douglas's actions, and they start chasing him. Douglas is finally caught, but just as he's about to be apprehended, he receives a call from an unknown number. He answers the call, fearing it might be the police, but instead he hears the voice of a man named Hammond, who claims to be his former partner spy. Hammond tells Douglas that his real ID and passport are locked in a box at a bank, and he needs to retrieve them to uncover the truth about his past. Hammond also warns Douglas to remove the phone tracker from his hand, as the police can use it to track him down. Douglas manages to cut the skin of his hand and remove the tracker, and then heads to the bank to retrieve his belongings. Meanwhile, Lori receives a call from Cohagen, instructing her that under no circumstances should they kill Douglas. They need him alive because he is very important to them. However, Lori disagrees with this decision and tells her men to kill Douglas if they get the opportunity, planning to lie to Cohagen by saying that Douglas was accidentally killed in the crossfire. At the bank, Douglas finds a box with his real ID, passport, and some documents. He also discovers a recorded message from his past, which he had recorded when he was caught by the Britain police. In the video, Douglas learns that his memories are being erased and that he needs to go to Britain to uncover the truth about himself. He finds a fake passport in the box, which has a hologram technique that allows him to change his appearance. With this new identity, Douglas is able to travel to Britain using the lift. However, when he exits the lift, he is caught by the guards. But just as he is about to be arrested, the girl from his dreams, Melina, appears and saves him from the guards. Together, they manage to escape and make their way to Douglas's address, avoiding the British police along the way. During the escape, Melina is knocked unconscious in a fight, and Douglas carries her in his arms to his home. There, he finds another recording that reveals more about his past. He learns that his real name is Carl, and that he was once an agent for Britain tasked with capturing the rebel group. However, after meeting Melina, Carl began to question Britain's motives and realized that they were doing wrong to the people of the colony. He discovered that Britain's leader, Cohagen, planned to increase the number of synthetic robots and kill all the workers in the colony once their work was completed, in order to make way for the rich people of Britain to have more living space. Horrified by this revelation, Carl turned against Britain and joined the rebel group. As a high-level agent of Britain, Carl had a kill code implanted in his brain, which could deactivate all the robots in Britain. However, after he turned against Britain, they captured him and erased his memories to prevent him from revealing the kill code. Now Carl must find a way to get to the leader of the rebel group, Mathia, and give him the kill code, which will allow them to deactivate the army of robots and liberate themselves from Britain's control. Melina regains consciousness and tells Carl that the dream he had was actually true. They both want to escape from Britain and start a new life together. They reminisce about their past and how they were trying to escape from Britain when they got shot in the hand simultaneously, leaving a mark that is still visible on their hands. Just as they are about to come up with a plan, Harry, Carl's friend, arrives with a group of soldiers. However, it is revealed that Harry is also an agent who has been pretending to be Carl's friend in order to keep an eye on him. Harry makes a shocking revelation, telling Carl that he is not Carl, but Douglas, and that everything he has experienced since going to the Recall program has been a fantasy. Harry claims that this is not reality and that Carl's memories are false. Harry continues to try to convince Carl that he is just a fantasy and that he should shoot Melina to return to reality. Carl is torn, unsure of what to believe. But when he sees the tears in Melina's eyes, he realizes that this is not just a fantasy. He knows that he has feelings for Melina and that he cannot bring himself to harm her. With newfound determination, Carl shoots Harry and quickly escapes with Melina, evading the rest of the guards. Lori is furious that her plan to capture Carl alive has failed, and she chases after them, but they manage to stay one step ahead. They then make their way to visit the rebel group leader so they can give him the kill code to deactivate the robots. With the help of other supporters, they finally reach the rebel group's space. Mathia, the leader of the rebel group, is overjoyed to see Carl and quickly sets to work removing the kill code from his brain. With the kill code in hand, the rebel group is finally able to deactivate the robots that have been controlling the colony. But just as it seems like the story is coming to a triumphant conclusion, Mathia reveals a shocking shocking twist. He tells Carl that everything he has experienced has been a lie. The truth is finally revealed, and it's a shocking one. There was no kill code in Carl's brain, and he was never meant to be a hero. Instead, he was sent to the rebel group as bait to lead the British police to the location of the rebel base. The British leader, Cohagen, had been searching for Mattia, the leader of the rebel group, for years, but he couldn't find him. So he came up with a plan to use Carl as a pawn in his game, so he could kill Mattia and eradicate the entire rebel group. However, after learning the truth, they try to escape, but by then, Cohagen, Lori, and the other soldiers have already arrived. They quickly attack Matthia's men and start killing them. And then, Cohagen reveals that Carl himself came up with the idea to erase his memories and spread the false news that there was a kill code in his brain. This was all part of a plan to get the rebel group to trust Carl and take him closer to their leader. Once Carl was close enough, the British police would strike and kill Mattia, eliminating the rebellion once and for all. Lori, the British agent, had been ordered not to kill Carl, no matter what happened. This was because Carl was the key to the whole plan, and he needed to be kept alive until the end. As the truth sinks in, Carl is filled with regret and anger. He can't believe that he was so blind and foolish. He had been playing right into Cohagen's hands all along, and now the rebel group was destroyed. The people of the colony were doomed to be slaves forever, and it was all because of Carl's own plan. As Cohagen kills Mattia, the leader of the rebel group, in front of him, Carl is filled with hatred for himself, Britain, and Cohagen. Cohagen orders his men to take Melina and restore Carl's old memories, erasing the last 7 weeks of his life. This will ensure that Carl has no sympathy for Melina and will not pose a threat to Britain's plans. However, just as the guards are about to erase Carl's memories, a guard intervenes and saves him. It is revealed that the guard is actually Hammond, the same person who helped Carl at the beginning of the story. Hammond had been working undercover as a policeman and had caused the blast in the train to help Carl. Hammond sacrifices himself to save Carl, but not before telling him that Cohagen is on his way to the colony with his robotic army to take control. Carl knows he must act fast to stop them. Carl quickly runs to the elevator and places time bombs around it, setting them to explode. He then goes inside to rescue Melina, ambushing and killing the soldiers who are holding her. However, more soldiers arrive, and Carl is forced to leave Melina behind and escape. Carl is eventually caught by the soldiers and taken to Cohagen. Cohagen is furious and reveals that Carl was once his best agent, but after erasing his memories, he turned against them. Cohagen believes that Carl's actions are a betrayal and that he must be killed. Just as Cohagen is about to kill Carl, Melina bursts in and starts taking down Cohagen's soldiers. The time bombs that Carl had planted earlier begin to explode, causing chaos and destruction throughout the elevator. The elevator is the only connection between the UFB and the Britain colony, and if it is destroyed, the Britain soldiers will be unable to reach the colony. Enraged, Cohagen attempts to kill Carl, but Carl is able to stab him first. Carl and Melina make a desperate escape from the falling elevator, narrowly avoiding death. Carl is knocked unconscious, but when he comes to, he is greeted by the sight of Melina sitting in front of him. However, Carl's joy is short-lived. As he looks at Melina's hands, he notices that the bullet mark is no longer there. Suddenly, he realizes that this is not the real Melina. In a shocking twist, Carl discovers that the person sitting in front of him is actually Lori, the British agent who had been pretending to be Melina. Without hesitation, Carl snatches a gun from one of the guards and kills Lori. As Carl sees the real Melina approaching, he is finally reunited with the woman he loves. The two share a moment of joy, knowing that they are finally together again. The colony is now free from British rule, and the people are able to live their lives without fear of oppression. However, just as Carl is about to celebrate, he notices that the tattoo from the Recall program is no longer on his hand. This raises questions in his mind about the nature of reality. Is this really the real world, or is he still living in a fantasy created by the Recall program? Carl's mind begins to wander, wondering if Harry was telling the truth when he said that his brain had forgotten to differentiate between reality and fantasy. Did Carl's brain create this entire reality, including Melina and the rebellion, as a way of coping with the trauma of the Recall program? But Carl doesn't dwell on these questions for long. He is happy to be with Melina, and he is content to live in this reality, no matter what its true nature may be. The story ends with a thrilling conclusion, leaving the reader wondering about the true nature of reality. Was Carl ever in reality, or was he just living a fantasy created by his own brain? Is his name really Carl, or is it still Douglas? The ending is intentionally ambiguous. Thanks for tuning in, guys.